I think we're going.
Cool. What we do and how we do it, or anything in this industry.
Joining ElectriCom to understand what that is, it made a lot of sense. They're doing magic.
Tell us a little bit more about your background.
I grew up in a pretty blue collar family. ElectriCom is working on providing that utility.
Welcome to Grid Connection. Today, I'm going to be the host of Grid Connection. My name is Ben. I'm the Director of Marketing here at ElectriCom, and I'll be interviewing Andy, who's our CEO and President here at ElectriCom. And going forward, Andy's actually going to take over as the host, but I thought it would be cool to kind of do a flip on that for our very first pilot episode here. So yeah, we'll kick things off. Andy, excited to learn more about you, and for our audience as well, to get kind of a background on you. So Andy, how did you get into this industry in the first place? I know you came, sounds like, from manufacturing. Tell us a little bit more about your background.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Ben, and appreciate you helping us get this launched, and looking forward to seeing what we can do with it. So I grew up in downstate Illinois, central Illinois, small communities, small town. And, as we look at what is available there from a utility and infrastructure space, it's pretty limited, right? And so specifically, ElectriCom is working on providing that utility infrastructure, both on the power side and the telecommunication, the fiber broadband side, to those communities and to those areas throughout our geographic footprint. And so naturally, in my life, moving from the manufacturing world to the construction world, it made a lot of sense when we saw the vision of what ElectriCom was doing in my past and what I've experienced through my life, to be part of it and to continue to help build and grow in ways in which we can help those that grew up in a very similar geographic footprint that I did, to have opportunities. So it was a great fit. It made a lot of sense.
Is there any kind of like lessons that you learned throughout those early experiences that you've kind of taken into what you've been doing at ElectriCom?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in a pretty blue collar family. And so naturally it was you get to eat what you kill type of a way to think about that. And so we were hardworking, a lot of, farm area, those types of things. And so it's really that, what you have to put in the hard work to get the reward in order to get there, right? And so I actually spent about 4 years welding on the shop floor in order to pay my way through college, and that really grounded the way in which I think about our crews and our leadership and the way we interact with our customers. And it's not just that it shows up, it's because we make it happen. It's because we get our hands dirty, the shovels in the ground, those types of things. And that is really a completely different way of thinking and what I've experienced from other key leaders. And this industry is pretty unique in that we've been pretty blessed across the industry with those who have kind of come up through the ranks and are now leading businesses. So it's a good community to be part of.
That's cool. So you mentioned a little bit about like key differences in how maybe other leaders think about this industry and how they operate. Can you expand on that a little bit more, and how maybe you're doing things differently?
Yeah, so here at ElectriCom, as we think about the way we interact with our vendors and our customers, they're just as much part of the ElectriCom family as our employees. I mean, you can think about several events that we've had in my time here at ElectriCom, where the vendors have probably been just as much of a support in helping us meet our customers' needs as our own employees have been. And so we continue to perpetuate that into the future. And we look at the way that we go to market and the way that we do business as a partnership. It's truly a partnership. And we value that relationship, as opposed to it's just who's the lowest price or who's the fastest. We take pride in the quality of work that we do, the suite of options that we bring to the table for our customers, and really our safety record speaks to that as well. We're not fly by night. We are truly here to meet those needs and to help our customers grow and meet the needs of their customers. That's ultimately what matters for us.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. Something that I've noticed, and I'm not from this industry at all, but having spoken to a handful of clients for ElectriCom, it's really cool to hear them talk about how our teams and crews really integrate into their companies and become almost a part of their team, right? And they see very little differentiation between their own crews and our crews, and I think that's some kind of magic. Really, it's pretty powerful when a client says that kind of thing. And me as a marketing guy, like that's like gold for me, right? But it's also it's a powerful testament to the kind of work that we do with clients and the relationships that we have, which I think is cool. And it's hard to cultivate that in any business for sure. So ElectriCom's been around for over 65 years. What do you think is the difference between a business that lasts in this industry and those that don't? What's made us so sticky over the years?
Yeah, I would say the first thing that came to my mind with that question is doing the right thing. Doing the right thing in the moment doesn't always mean you're doing the easy thing. It typically means you're doing the hard thing. And that could be anything from making sure that you're meeting that need on a night or a weekend. It could be that you're just raising your hand and saying, hey, there might be a better way to do that. But we are not the change order king of the world, is maybe the way to say that. When we say we're going to do something and when we sign a contract to do something, that's what happens. And that our customers can rely on us that the job is going to be done right. It's going to be done on time. And in those rare events that it doesn't, I can point to a couple of examples where we have made it right. Not at the expense of our customer, but at the expense of our company. And that's really, again, going back to what I said earlier, is that relationship. We are banking on that relationship into the future. And our customers know that. They hear that from other customers, other vendors. And that's really what's allowed our engineering partnerships to be so successful, is that when they bring a project to us, they know what they're getting. It's repeatable. They don't have to look over their shoulder. They know that they're going to get exactly what they asked for. We might have some ideas of how we can continue to help that or improve that, but ultimately, they don't have to worry. They know what they're going to get. Like you said, 65 years in business, you don't get that just by showing up and doing some shady work. You have to have a reputation in the industry that supersedes you, and that's typically where we get work. The overwhelming majority of our work is coming from a referral, and those that don't come from a referral, typically it's a quasi referral that ends in a bid process type of thing. But that's our name and our reputation is ultimately what leads for us.
Sure. Yeah. And again, I mean, it's like that reputation it's so hard to cultivate, and one bad experience can sour that, right? But explain to me a little bit more, just maybe if you can elaborate on maybe an example of a time that you think we did a good job of just doing right by customer when maybe we didn't have to do that, but we wanted to build the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a recent example. I'll keep it vague, but give you the point. There's a recent example that comes to mind where we had a discrepancy in quantities between the engineering firm, our subcontractor, and ourselves. And it did end up that the customer overpaid for ultimately what was done. So we had to look in the mirror on our part and see where we fell short, how we missed that in terms of our process. There is the kind of the sign off by all the parties, I guess you could say, that was done, and just upon audit and in a little bit deeper dive, it was over. The quantities were too high compared to reality, and so there is a argument that we could have otherwise made that said, no, everybody signed off. We're good, like but we
Right.
didn't. We processed that refund back to that customer and made it whole with them. And thankfully, we have that ongoing, continued positive relationship, both with the customer and the engineering group as a result. But that was a tough pill to swallow. But again, we have to make sure that we are the ones looking in the mirror and knowing that ultimately, even if everyone else signed off, we failed, and we have to own that. And that's just how we do business, and that's what our customers have come to expect and know. And you can build a relationship in 65 years and a reputation, but you will crumble it in 30 seconds. You'll never get it back. So we have to make sure that we're always doing the right thing first.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think it's important in any industry to operate with integrity and to do right by the customer when you're able to, right? And ideally, that's always right.
Absolutely.
Cool. So I don't come from this industry. I mentioned that. I'm curious to know what you think people maybe misunderstand or don't get, or have common misconceptions about what we do and how we do it, or anything in this industry.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just give you one that I had prior to coming to this industry that I've learned a lot about. Um, you know, I came from a different field services industry. It was also blue collar, working the equipment, crew based, working in municipal space. But I mean, I'll be honest. When I saw the scope and type of work that ElectriCom does, I thought, oh, that's kind of the low end of the rung, right? Like there's other trades that are superior to that, and I had to ask a lot of questions before joining ElectriCom to understand what that is, and I would put our crews and our field management up against anyone in any industry, in that challenge there, because there is a plethora of deep knowledge in this industry that is probably misunderstood. Like, oh, that's just simple work. They're just digging ditches. Anybody can do that. But man, when you really step back and look at the scope and type of work that our guys are doing and enabling and performing, they're they're doing magic really on the day to day. If you really think about it, I mean, what is the internet that's coming to your house? It's this light passing at the light of the speed of light, going through these little glass tubes, and somehow that becomes internet at your house. It's not like you just open up your phone and there it is. Somebody had to build that network, and it's not always sexy, but the amount of knowledge that our guys have in order to be able to execute on that is actually really, really impressive. It doesn't just appear out of thin air. These guys are hardworking guys and gals that are the ones really paving the way for something that has kind of become a fourth or even a fifth utility. I mean, I would challenge anyone to live without the fiber broadband that they now have once they have it. And then on the other side of our business, the power side, that is something that before ElectriCom even, I had a lot of respect for the linemen that are doing that work. I mean, if you really step back and think about it, their job is to show up every day and put their life at risk so that other people can cool, heat, have their refrigerator running, whatever it is, because we as a culture, we as a nation, and really largely most parts of the world, if you cut the power out, everything is at a dead stop, right? So our guys on the power side of our business, they are out there and all levels of weather. It could be a nice day. I mean, we do the storm restoration as well. So those guys are out there immediately following, a traumatic event, whether that is a hurricane, it could be an ice storm, a windstorm, a tornado. But you just think about the roughest conditions, and those guys are out there doing the restoration to bring everybody back as quickly as possible and safely as possible. And, I got the opportunity earlier this year to go out on a storm restoration, and just seeing the conditions that the guys were working in was impressive. I mean, they were having to outrun trees as they were falling while they're up in the bucket. They had to cut their way through some streets just in order to, get to that next pole to bring it back. These guys they're working 16-hour days, 7 days a week on that restoration. And I think that gets taken for granted. It's just, oh, does my light switch work or not? So
Right.
that's a lot more than what you asked for there, but
No, but
all the credit goes to the crews.
Yeah, 100%, man. I mean, I think linemen, like you said, are they're as important as like doctors, or they're one of the biggest public services that we have in this country. And like you said, they're risking their life every day when they're out there. Everything that we have today runs on power, and then you have like the funny kind of duality to me of like the Silicon Valley guys that are building all of these, especially now today with AI and all of this stuff, right? That is using the internet and fiber optic cable, and then you have the people that are running that and installing that. And I think that the shiny object is, it's easy to become like these like softwares or these tools and all of this stuff, but really what's amazing is that the people that are out there installing this to make it come to our homes. And I am a perfect example of that. I never really thought about it all that much. The linemen I always had respect for. My grandfathers worked for an RMC or on the board or whatever. But I never really took a lot of time to think about how complex all of that was, and what it takes to get it to each of our homes or businesses or any of that, right? It's pretty fascinating. So yeah, like you said, it maybe is not all that glamorous, but I do find it interesting. I said that when I met you guys, just because it is interesting. Like when you start to dig into it, it's pretty fascinating, and the way that our society basically runs on the kind of work that ElectriCom does, and other companies like us. So
Absolutely.
cool. So what do you think? I guess this is maybe a two-part question. What do you think's harder than it looks? We'll just start there. What do you think's harder than it looks when it comes to kind of work that we do, or just our industry in general?
Yeah, I would say I'm going to go back to the crews. Right? It sounds so simple that whether this is the power side or the telecom side, the fiber broadband side, either one, it's kind of still the same, right? It sounds just okay. We're gonna run from point A to point B. It sounds simple, but what we're not thinking about in that is what are the things that have to be done before, and what are the things that have to be done after, so that it actually works, right? Like on the power side, you can take a piece of conduit or a piece of conductor, and you can start at the first pole, and you can take it to the second pole, and you can just lay it on the ground. Okay, well, you did go from pole A to pole B, but
Right.
what about everything else that leads up to that, right? You actually have to get it up on the pole, which means that you have to have the permits, you have to have the right equipment, you have to have the right safety aspects into play, right? Thinking about the power side is, okay, are you working with live, or is it turned off? Are you going to cause an outage? What are the things that are in the way of you working safely in that area? Do you need to have the cover-ups? Again, there's so many things that are, I would say, pre-planning that are required in that to be successful in that and safe in that. And those are the things that our crews, our general foremen, our foremen, they do really well. Is all right, this is what we're going to do. Here's the things that we see from a safety aspect. They're going to potentially be hazards today. Here's how we're mitigating those hazards, and then running. So when you roll up to a crew, first thing in the morning, what you don't see is, you know, they drive 100 miles an hour to get there, and then they get there and they just kind of pull off in a ditch and throw all the stuff on the ground, and then get up in the bucket and start working. Or, on the underground side is they're looking at where's our locates, where's our utilities, what are our hazards that we could potentially, have damage to, or, I mean, if you hit a gas line or something, now you're talking about death. So there's a lot of pre-planning that goes into that before you ever even see the work itself start happening. And so I think that's really one misconception, that I've heard before is, oh, well, you drive down the road and you just see a group of construction guys that are just standing there doing nothing. Okay,
Yeah.
there's probably a little bit more to it than that. They're making sure the maps are right, the routes are right. Again, going back to the locates, the safety aspects, what's the hazards? What we don't want is that you get there, you rush, you start doing something, and then you have an incident where someone is injured, someone unfortunately doesn't go home, or they do go home, but they're, in a little bit different condition than before. So I think the pre-planning aspect is really the answer to that question, and I would say our guys are fantastic at doing that. I'd put them up against anyone.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. In a conversation I had with a power client of ours recently, he mentioned that he had trouble with a previous contractor that he was working with, and just really did not have a good experience with them. They were experiencing a lot of outages, unplanned outages, things like that. And one of the key things that he mentioned was, in working with us, they were able to reduce unplanned outages, I think, by like 30 to 40%. So, I mean, what do you think? What are we doing, or what are they doing? What's that other guy doing versus what we're doing? What's the differentiator there? Why are we able to come in and say, hey, we're doing this? We're able to immediately have a pronounced effect, positive effect on the level of unplanned outages. Do you think that's all has to do with just pre-planning, or could it be other things too?
Yeah, I think it does go a lot to pre-planning. I think it also goes to culture. One of the things that we and again, I know you said this is a power customer, so I'll dive into that a little bit. One thing that I think our construction managers on the power side especially do really well is that aspect. I can think of at least 2 or 3 times where I've been on a project, just a regular crew visit, and the construction manager has, no question. He'll just speak up. Hey guys, this is what I see. This is what we're doing. Have you guys thought about this? And so I think it's culture. 2, it's just the empowerment of anyone to speak up. It could be the ground hand. Just, hey, I see this. Let's make sure that we're watching out for that. So again, I think it's just what's ingrained in the culture. And those guys are really truly friends. They are looking out for each other, but also kind of that pre-planning, like I mentioned earlier. I can think of a couple projects that I've rolled up on where that safety talk, that toolbox talk in the morning, it allowed some things to be seen or heard or talked about that maybe otherwise would not have been. So it goes to that. Other thing I would plug there, just because I think it's important, is we believe in the apprenticeship program deeply on both sides of our business, right? And I think our training department has probably been on the forefront of finding those opportunities on our fiber broadband side to bring in folks who have from outside the industry and bring them into our industry, and put them through a apprenticeship program so that when they do arrive at the job site and they are working on things, they're not just doing whatever somebody else tells them or doesn't tell them. They actually have some knowledge. They've been through some examples of what to look for, what's right, what's wrong, what questions to ask. And that's something that we've been pretty successful in both recruiting for that, but also helping folks go through that program so that when they do complete the program, different links for different types of roles for sure. But there's that a sense of accomplishment, and then almost you could call it a pride of if I'm going to be a lineman, I need to act like a lineman. It really does help a lot of folks. So we're actively, I guess what I'm saying is we're actively investing in the training and the growth of our employee base, as opposed to how can we just hire whoever off the street and just hope that they are doing the right work, and then just hope that they're here. We have a pretty good and long tenure with our leaders on the crews and our management, and that continuity, I think, is probably the word there, allows for a much safer environment, and the customer gets the benefit of that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean that's awesome. I'm going to ask maybe a controversial question.
Absolutely.
What do you think customers underestimate about what we're accomplishing out in the field?
Yeah, I mean, I think the easy answer there is that everybody chases price, right? And so what folks don't understand until they experience, and unfortunately sometimes those experiences are a little bit harder to swallow, is that low price doesn't always win. And by that I mean, for us, we are actively trying to provide a service to our customers that actually takes off their plate instead of adds to their plate. So meaning, going back to where we started the conversation, is that when you want something done, you don't have to think twice about whether or not it's going to get done. We're trying to make sure that it is done. And when you need to complete whatever it is that you've engaged with us to complete, is that now that's off your plate. Obviously there's inspections and those types of things at the end to make sure, but you don't have to show up daily. Okay, are they even going to show up today? Are they even going to bring enough crews today? Are they going to leave a mess of where they worked? Those types of things that are just kind of thorns in the side is maybe a good way to say that. And you can certainly get the cheapest, but is the cheapest actually cheapest in the end? Because then our customers, we've had some experiences where our customers have had to go and hire additional inspectors, additional, let's call it oversight. And then, let's talk about the back office in terms of closeout, in terms of processing. It's going to be clean when it comes from us. But that's because we have engaged and hired and brought on more resources to be able to do that. And so our customer doesn't have to, right? When we are working with the engineer, we're tying things out, and our customer doesn't have that headache. So I think that's one thing that, if I had the opportunity to sit down, is that, low price isn't always the best. I understand why it's out there. I understand the bidding, all of that stuff. But sometimes when we get to those opportunities where it's not necessarily required, just simply going with the lowest is not necessarily going to get you the best outcome.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, again, to draw back to interactions that I've had with our clients, a lot of the ways that we came into relationships with clients started with us redoing work that had been done by someone else that was not done correctly, or they got pulled off of, right? And it was because, they had the opportunity to go with us, but they chose someone else because it was a lower price, and they had problems with them. And so, yeah, I mean, I think you're right. And I think that's probably true in every industry. It goes both ways, and I understand, like you said, why companies, they've got numbers to hit as well, right? Everybody does. But yeah, typically the saying goes, you get what you pay for at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
And yeah. So I want to harken back to a little bit of our history as a company. And I know that, you weren't around in the early days, but I'm curious to hear, I definitely wasn't. And so for the listeners and for myself too, I'm curious, tell us a little bit about ElectriCom in the early days. And then I want to transition into kind of how we've grown and changed over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. Like most that are in our industry, it really started with the electrification of America and how that worked in the rural markets. And I'm going in the Wayback Machine here. This is before ElectriCom even started, right? And that really created the foundation that allowed what became ElectriCom to work. And by that I mean you have the creation of the rural electric co-ops. You have the creation of what then became the co-ops for telephone service, and that is ultimately what got ElectriCom into the world that it is today, is by partnering with those types of customers and those types of geographies. And that has allowed the company to start and then grow from there. That's the foundation. There's been other customer types for sure, but that's really, the beginning, if you would. So think back to, the times in which there was copper beat networks being built. Like that was the big thing, right? And then also thinking about on the power side is that once the rural electrification was done, those systems have to be maintained. People will continue to move. They have to build more, network, more grid out as well. And so that's really where ElectriCom, kind of got its start, if you would, is in those geographies and in those customer types, really in southern Indiana, and then grew from there. And so now we're much larger than that. But what has not changed in that is that those independent telephone companies, those co-ops, those rural electric, like those EMCs, that's our bread and butter. That's who we have worked with for 65 years. And hopefully we get to continue to work with for another 65 years. But that's really kind of the grassroots, if you would, of kind of how the industry and then how ElectriCom played into that, to kind of get it start and then, grow along the way.
Sure. So like pre-fiber, were we involved in running telephone lines as well alongside power?
I mean, before the fiber was out, it was copper. So lots of copper networks were built, and then you had to maintain those copper networks. There's still some copper networks out there today. It's almost, well, it's nearly not. Or you're gonna have to edit this part right here, but that's okay. So. That's okay. I lost my whole train of thought. But as we think about the copper networks, they are phasing out, and in many cases, they're being torn out as the customers are building. Our customers are building their fiber broadband networks. Some of them are leaving their fiber and just abandoning it, leaving their copper and just abandoning it. And that could be, typically that's going to be when it's underground as opposed to on, aerial on poles. But yeah, I mean, ElectriCom participated in the copper for sure.
Huh, that's pretty wild. And then, I know at one point we were involved in natural gas at some time as well. Is that right?
Yes, there was some natural gas over, especially around the East Coast, up and down the East Coast. We were involved in the natural gas. Tough industry to get really a strong foothold in. And so it just made sense for us to kind of go back, if you would, to the core and stick with our fiber broadband and our power capabilities. Not to say that there isn't an opportunity for us in the future, always making sure that we're looking at the right verticals, still inside that utility infrastructure space. But just at the time, it didn't make sense for us to continue in that space.
Yeah, that makes sense. Totally. Cool. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about maybe if you can give me like snapshot in like different phases of growth or big changes that have happened from those early days on to kind of now where we're at today, right?
Yeah. So I think the way to think about ElectriCom's growth has been growth via M&A. And I don't mean expansive M&A, but strategic M&A in particular geographies with particular customers that have allowed the company to expand in its footprint inorganically. And then once we expand that way, then there's obviously an organic play that comes out of that, right? So Southern Indiana makes a lot of sense that the company expanded, kind of from Southern Indiana into the Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee markets, right? It's kind of all right there. But really, one thing that was key in that was Likens Construction, based there in Kentucky, and Scotty. That's Scotty's company. Scotty's still with us today, running the Midwest. That really solidified kind of that market there that I just mentioned, and then also helped to make it a little more dense, expand it a little bit more, and kind of grow out of that Southern Indiana only market, and then go from there. Another one that comes to mind is Hall Construction in South Carolina. A couple core customers there has led to a pretty expansive opportunity down there. And so really they're working in South Carolina. Hall Construction was working in South Carolina there. And that has allowed the opportunity for growth up into North Carolina, down into Georgia, and really kind of that move out of that kind of upper Midwest area and down into the Southeast, and continued growth in that area as well. There's been some opportunistic growth organically into, let's call it, the Gulf and East Texas areas, meaning we have relationships with customers, engineers. Hey, would you guys want to go look at this type of thing? And then as we've been able to be successful in winning new work and new customers kind of in those geographies, we've been able to edge out and find our way, and then kind of plant a base or plant a flag, if you would, and continue to grow that way. And then most recently, we partnered with Isbell Construction. So they're now part of the ElectriCom family down in the, let's call it, the central Texas area into the West Texas area. And for us, Isbell has been a long-term partner that we have worked with, overlapping customer type, not necessarily geography, just because they're doing the severe terrain and heavy rock work that is just not our bread and butter. It is now, thanks to Dustin and his team. But that's been our opportunity now to expand over into West Texas. We were already over in New Mexico just with some organic opportunities, but nothing super material, I would say. But now this really allows us to go after that under the Isbell name and the Isbell service package that they provide, because that's just what that geography requires. So I guess to kind of bring all that together is there's been a combination of inorganic and organic growth opportunities that has established our current geography. But the same rings true through all of it, is that we're trying to stick with that same customer type, that same customer profile. That's just where we've been successful. That's where we have the best relationships. It's where we've been able to partner the best with our engineering firms, and really provide kind of that higher level of service that those customer types truly value. And it's been mutually beneficial for both.
Sure. So I mean, over the course of these years, I know a lot's changed, and the industry has changed too, not just us, right? So what kinds of things have happened within the industry that have forced us to adapt to kind of new market conditions or infrastructure conditions, anything like that?
Yeah. So I think the first thing that pops into my mind there is funding, right? Is that there's different levels of funding for these projects to be built, whether it's on the power side or the fiber broadband side. You really kind of have the same theme, if you would, of funding. The first one that comes to my mind is you can pay for it yourself, right? So the customer can self-fund a project, whether that's maintenance, whether that's going to be extensions or complete new build outs, those types of things. The other is federal funding, and kind of go in the way back machine, if you would. That rural electrification, really, that is what started and enabled those power lines to be built out to the farms, out to the small communities. And that's a federal program that then was altered a little bit under it's under RUS is what it's called, altered. And those same customer types building in those same general geographies were able to use the federal funding to help them build out where, the business model didn't make sense. But if you had a longer duration of time to pay back that financing, then it did make sense. And so that enabled the small towns. But the small town I grew up in still doesn't have the fiber network, but it's a small town of about 2,000. And it made for communities to be like that, to be able to make sense for them to run those networks to them and bring that high-speed internet to them. You also have state level funding, and each state manages that differently. But I think the thing that is consistent in all of that is that it is ever changing. It is ever flowing. There's different requirements. And probably as I think about it over time, those requirements have become a little tougher, if you might say. Like there's different requirements in that, different hurdles and hoops that our customers have to jump through to get that funding, which then also comes back to us, is we have to make sure that we're doing our part in helping them, get to that funding so that they can continue to build, through that. I think that's kind of been a pretty consistent and common theme, is that it ebbs and it flows, it ebbs and it flows. And then I also think about the workforce. Like those entering the workforce today are not the same as those entering the workforce 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And there's just an ebb and flow there as to, the blue collar mindset of, is that the path you want to go? Is that not the path you want to go? I think there for a while, we found ourselves as a culture in that go to college or you've failed aspect. And unfortunately, in my opinion, that has caused a gap in our trade workforce, where those with the knowledge are in their latter years. They're getting closer and closer to retirement. And then you have a gap of maybe that leadership where they're just less experienced because there were just less people entering the workforce. And now I think you're seeing a bit of a flip in that, where some of these younger generations are saying, well, is college really worth it? Right. Is it really worth the squeeze? And we're starting to see more and more that are looking at the trades again as an opportunity for them to really make a good life for themselves, for their families, do some honest work. But I do think you still have that middle gap right there. And I would, if there's any young bucks that are humble and hungry, looking to make a splash, go talk to some of these guys, these veteran guys, because I think what you'll find is, they made some really good lives for themselves and their families. They didn't have to, go the route that culture maybe has told them that they needed to go. And some of the absolute best leaders are the ones who come up through the ranks because they understand what the challenges are at the crew level, and they can anticipate, they can see them, they can sympathize with them, as opposed to, well, a textbook told me this.
Right.
It's very different. And so I think that's how I would think about kind of the ebb and flow throughout the years.
Yeah, I mean well, and that's interesting to comment on our workforce now. Like I know when I was young, I come like my grandfather's a farmer, and I was always exposed to farming, but it was never like, oh, you could do this one day. I mean, obviously that was a possibility, I guess, but the I was always encouraged to go to school so that I don't end up as a farmer. Really was the message, uh, and now that I'm like an adult, and I live on the farm, I find myself wishing I'd learned more when I was younger about that lifestyle, so that I could be more involved in it. And so yeah, I mean, I think in we're close enough in age that I'm sure you experienced similar things, right? Trades were never. I mean, heck, I went to a school that didn't even have a trade program of any kind.
Yeah.
We didn't even have a shop class, and so I've started learning shop stuff in my own workshop now that I have in my garage, as an adult. And I tell my buddies around here that it's like they grew up, they had a shop class at their school, and I'm like, I'm doing all of that in my 30s.
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
That's all good. But yeah, you're right. It's interesting, and I think it's created a pretty serious problem for the country, and in infrastructure wise and beyond, anything that involves trades. And there's a ton of opportunity for young people that are entering
Absolutely.
into that workforce, and it's going to continue to be that way. To address that internally at ElectriCom when it comes to the workforce, and how do we work to try to bridge that gap of, hey, everybody's trying to compete to get these young bucks that are coming in to fill the gaps.
Yeah, one thing that is a good example of it recently is that there's in southern Indiana there's a local organization trying to encourage folks to do that, and they allows them effectively to kind of do a work program, if you would, in their latter years of high school. So those who choose to do that, they get to experience different trades. Many of them are actually graduating with their CDL, just giving them opportunities to experience what it's really like. We have a training center in Southern Indiana, and we've been able to host that organization and others a couple of times. I was fortunate enough about 2 months ago to be there on the same day that one went through. And there was probably 3 or 4 in that group that were like, I'm applying. I'm applying here when I graduate. And so it's opportunities like that. It's going out to the high school career fairs and just putting up our banners that show what it is that we do, and allowing the kids to ask questions. And then the best source is our existing workforce. Is, hey, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your own kids, what we do and how we can help them out and help them be successful in this industry. There's 2 boys that I can think of off the top of my head that are sons of our employees, and I'm constantly checking in. Hey, how they doing? They interested? Like, let's help them out. So that's the best way, is try and it's exposure. It's so hard, but it's exposure. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think we do a good job of that too, and I've definitely seen that on the marketing side of participation in career fairs and things like that at high schools and beyond. So shifting gears a little bit, we talk a lot about relationships at ElectriCom, and certainly when I came on board, that's very heavy, and we invest a lot into relationships. But why do relationships actually matter in our industry?
Yeah. So first of all, we don't want it to be transactional, right? Because again, going back to kind of what is it that ElectriCom provides that separates us from the other, is we're truly looking to be a partner. in the build that they're doing or the maintenance of the grid that they are trying to maintain. Is we want to be that one where you know that when you call at 2 o'clock in the morning because you have a problem, somebody's answering the phone. Somebody's there to help you out. Because here's what we know. I mean, I know that we are providing the service to our customer for their customer, but their customer doesn't have a grasp of what it takes to maintain, and they just want whatever it is to work. They want the power to work. They want the internet to work. And so the more that ElectriCom can make sure that our customer looks good to their customer, that's ultimately the goal. That's the win. And so there's times where we've had to find ways, if you would, to overcome some deadlines to make sure that we have a hurdle and we get around it. And that's just who we are. That's what we're going after. And again, going back to kind of the beginning of where something I said earlier is our customers know that when they need something done, it's going to get done. And that's we don't want to be a question mark. We want to be a period at the end of the sentence. It's done.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I think, yeah, I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on how the interaction with a customer that maybe we don't have a long-standing relationship with versus one that we do. How do those projects differ?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, and one that we have a long-standing relationship, it's a little bit more. I wouldn't say lax, but a little bit more. The customer is more open to our feedback, more open to here is what needs to be done, and then we can take it and run from there. Again, going back to you give it to us and then you don't have to think about it, type of thing. Whereas with a new customer who does not yet know that, has not yet experienced that, they'll just have to see it to believe it, type of a thing. And we have that conversation a lot with new customers. Is really just kind of that, okay, we just need a chance. Just give us that chance, and then you'll see it and you'll experience it. And then you'll kind of know what that's like. Now, what I'm not saying is, okay, it's full hands off. The customer is just, it's done. They never have to think about it because there's such a relationship there. It's really that, okay, what is our touch points? What are our communication points? What are our check-ins and making sure that we continue to stay on the same page? What's our project updates? What's our production? Those types of things. Like, you're always going to have that. That's basic 101 project management, right? But it really comes down to just that trust factor. That, okay, I don't have to second guess that you told me A, B, and C, and it's not right. It's you just have that level of trust, and it just allows the project to flow. It allows for when we hit a roadblock and a hurdle, we're just going to make sure we get through it. Those types of things. It's just a little calmer, I think, is the way to say that.
Sure. Well, Andy, I really appreciate you walking me through this, and our listeners as well. To our listeners, thank you for sticking around and listening. We hope that you enjoyed, what Andy had to share today, and myself as well. And we'll look forward to future episodes. I'm definitely looking forward to listening to you, Andy, interview others. In the future, we'll be interviewing anywhere from employees to customers to whoever we can get on here that we think would be an interesting person to chat with. So stick around, stay tuned, and thanks again, Andy.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ben.